Thanks very much, and I'll perhaps start with just a word about our role as the Information Commissioner, because I just want to give a right that whatever I say is not taking sides in this debate, either with the Home Office or with anybody else. Because, as Tom Brake said, we haven't actually seen the proposals yet, and already the Information Commissioner has been accused of being an apologist for the Home Office, and by the Home Office of commenting adversely on proposals that he hasn't even seen yet. So, I mean, our job is as a regulator, it's not to take sides in this. We do very much support the idea that there is a proper, informed debate, and it's a matter for Parliament at the end of the day to decide what the regime is. And then within that, we will ensure that that regime, where it falls within our regulatory remit, the data protection area, is properly applied. And in that debate in Parliament, we are happy to provide an expert view, and when we're asked, we'll give that view. And I think there are just three things in particular that I want considered in that debate, and some of them have been referred to already. It is that again, I hesitate because we haven't seen the proposals. I can only really base what I say on what the previous proposals were. But we are moving from a situation where in the past all we had was access by law enforcement agencies to data which were already there, kept and retained by service providers, typically telephone providers, and this was billing data. We have moved to require those providers to keep that data for longer than they otherwise might do in the retention arrangements. But there is a move here perhaps into a rather different field where we're really requiring them to retain data which they wouldn't otherwise retain, they have no business need for, or even to create data that they wouldn't necessarily create. So I think that is something to look out for. I think also there is the argument, with some justification, that what the law enforcement agencies want to do is, if you like, reproduce what their previous capability was with traditional telephony into the internet age. But I do think that there is, you need to factor into that the way we all live our lives so differently these days. And if you like, if you access my old communications telephone data 15 years ago, you'd have got a very much less of a picture of my life than you would if you access, what you might call the equivalent data on the internet, because so much is done now over the internet, with Facebook and social network, which was just done by people's face-to-face communications in the past and done very differently. So you are building in a different level. And someone earlier just mentioned, and I think it's a very good point, we're moving to smart metering, where the electricity meters and gas meters in our houses will transmit data over the internet about our electricity usage. Now, there's clearly, you can argue about what's communications or traffic and content data, but there's clearly data there which is being captured, and that's data which would never have existed in the past. So that, and then picking up the point about access, and I think this has always been a concern of our office. That the setting up of forms of surveillance, forms of intrusion, and we've looked at this particularly with border control and passenger name record information, is justified on the grounds of counter-terrorism. So that's the basis that justifies the intrusion into privacy, maybe quite rightly. But then those data are actually used for a lot of, if you like, lesser purposes, less serious offences, which taken on their own would not necessarily have justified the intrusion in the first place. And I know that in the border control area, the data are really more useful for things like drug trafficking and human trafficking than they really are for counter-terrorism. So there is that here. This comes to this question: who is going to have access to the data for what? But our real role is to ensure that whatever Parliament decide, then that is implemented in the most privacy-friendly way. So what we want to see are the safeguards and controls. We want a proper privacy impact assessment. The high-level privacy impact assessment is the parliamentary debate of what we're engaged in now. But once we've decided what the basic system is, privacy impact assessments to ensure it's deployed in the most privacy-friendly way. A very strict access regime with approvals and limitations on access to the data. Picking up, Tom said it, and Tim Berners-Lee said it in the Guardian yesterday, about any collection of data is vulnerable to theft or release by corrupt officials or operators. So a proper security regime and the possibility of prison sentences, which we've been pressing for a long time, for those who misuse their rights of access to data there. Commitment to work with other regulators, because we're not the only regulator in the field. The individual rights apply. If you've got a collection of data, the individual rights of access, rights of correction must apply to that just as they apply to any collection of data. But lastly, a plea which follows up what Derek Korf said, that this should be based on law, and Peter Summers' comment that the law should be clear. Please give us a law, whatever it says. Please give us a clear law. Because unless we have a law that is clear, easy to understand and implement, it is very difficult for us as a regulator to deliver what is expected of us in terms of privacy protection.